Hi guys, welcome to this Get Up From Your Desk. So this one we're going to work on hip extension. So that's the ability to fully flex your hip back, extend your hip back in here. Okay. Now normally this is done by the hip flexor stretch. So I'm going to cover that in detail. I'm going to teach you how to get the most out of that. And then we'll do two progressions from there as well, okay, which will further increase that stretch. Now when you're sat down for extended periods of time, over and over, you can see your hips are actually in the opposite position, so they're extremely flexed, but also not active, so they're not working. So our hip flexors and our hip extensors often end up being both tight and weak, which is a bad combination to have. So we're going to set up in this hip flexor stretch. So hip flexor stretch, a lot of us will be familiar with this one. We do it quite a lot. So you're in this position here, okay? Now, we see a lot of faults with this stretch. There's a lot of things that go on that aren't quite right. So let's start off by getting it right, and then I'll go through some of the common faults that you'll see. So the first thing is, when you set up, you want this shin to be pretty vertical. And you want this thigh to be fairly vertical. It can be sticking out the back a little bit, so it can be angled slightly, but you don't want it too big, okay? You want to make sure you're all squared up, okay? So you want to make sure that everything is facing the way it's meant to be, okay? So this knee is tracking nicely over that toe. So wherever the toe is pointing, it should be pointing straight ahead. The knee is facing that way as well. Your body's nice and straight and aligned. You're not leaning to the side. You're not leaning forward or leaning back, okay? And then the back leg, you want to make sure, for the purposes of this stretch, you want to make sure it's not off to the side here and it's not sticking out to the side. Everything is facing the same direction. So now we've established that position. So yeah, you also don't want to be leaning back or leaning forward. Okay, so just nice upright posture. So once we're in there, you should start to feel a little bit just here. If you just push your knee slightly further forward, so this shin becomes vertical, you should feel a little bit more. But now the trick is to squeeze your glutes and tilt your hips. Okay? It's a very subtle movement, but you'll immediately feel a pull through that hip flexor. Okay? It's just a squeeze of the glutes and a tilt of the hips. You should be able to feel it much more. So I'll show you from a standing position. So what often happens with this hip flexor stretch is we go into a super wide sort of stance like this, and then we just sort of throw our lower back out, we lean back, and it feels alright, but we're not making the most of it, and we quite often go down into we end up stretching more into the quad. We're not quite aligned, you know, we end up hurting our lower back a little bit because we're fading away like this. Okay. Or what you do is, we just have a little bit closer together, and imagine you're trying to tilt your pelvis from this direction, so your pelvis is like this, and then you want to do this, okay? So we're driving through like this. So imagine you're finishing off a glute bridge, and you'll immediately feel it come on. Then you can push yourself forward, but keep squeezing your glutes, and you'll just increase that stretch a lot more. So that's the first key thing, is squeeze the glute, especially the side that's being stretched, okay? Imagine you're trying to take your hips from this posture, and then you're kind of tuck in and round, okay? As if you're finishing a glute bridge or a hip thrust. Next thing is the back foot. So this foot, people often will have it like this, and you can actually feel the difference. If I do this, and then I bring my toe up, and I push my toe in, it allows me to drive through that hip a little bit more, and stretch that hip flexor, okay? So when you take your hip foot, if it's like this now, take your toe into the ground, push your toe into the floor, and then squeeze your glute. Okay? So let's do both sides now. So let's just push for 20 seconds. You should really feel a good stretch there to begin with. So, not too far apart. Front shin's probably going to be vertical with a 90-degree knee angle. Pretty similar on the back leg. You might have it back a little bit more, depending on how flexible you are. Toe into the floor. Nice upright posture. Everything's facing the same direction. Okay. Now squeeze the glute really hard, as hard as you can here, and then just gently push the knee forward, push the toe into the floor, and you'll feel a big stretch right through. Just keep squeezing the glute and pushing the glute through. Push again, keep pushing here and pushing your toe in. Good. Same on the other side. So let's get this set up. So toes into the floor, 90 degree. Yeah, roughly at the front, a little bit more angle on this back leg. Now squeeze the glute, push your toe into the floor, and we'll count down from 20. Okay, so keep that squeeze on, don't release it even if you just push forward a little bit. Don't be tempted to do this, keep yourself just nice and straight and locked. 3, 2, 1, and relax, okay? So, should feel a little bit loose through there. Now, 2 variations that you can do to actually increase the stretch on this is, the first one, are commonly known as couch stretch, but you can use a chair for it, works just as well. Same principles apply for both of these, so that same glute squeeze is going to help with that stretch. But with a couch stretch, take the back leg, same rule here, and it's just your back foot becomes elevated, okay, which then lengthens this part here, okay. So it isn't a little bit more extreme. You'll probably feel a little bit more into the quad as well, but same principle applies. If you can squeeze the glute on this side, or both glutes, woo, straight away you'll feel that. Okay, so get into this position, make sure your lower back's not arching here, keep your lower back nice and flat, abs braced, and then we'll squeeze, and we'll do 20 seconds. Ready? Squeeze, 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, and so on. Let's keep going, keep squeezing here. So as soon as you squeeze that glute, you'll feel it come on. If you don't feel it immediately, don't be tempted to try and push further forward. Just try and, you can actually grab your glute and try and make it tense, okay? And you'll immediately feel 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, go same on the other side. So, foot elevated. You could use a wall even for this and grab your foot against the wall, but chair is really great for this. Okay, get that roughly 90 degree vertical shin. Okay, ready? We're going to do the same thing. We're going to do a 20 second squeeze. So ready? 3, 2, 1. Abs braced. Squeeze the glute. And we'll start from 20, 19, 18, and so on. So really try and tuck that pelvis round, keeping your abs straight. Don't lean back. Keep squeezing. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, so you should feel now here, right through here, starting to get a little bit looser. Now, you can also use the chair again. The second one uses the chair, but it's just the opposite way around essentially. So instead of putting your back foot on the chair, you're going to put your front foot on the chair. So you're just going to stick that front foot up. You're going to get this to be roughly that 90 degree angle again. We're then going to move this back leg out a little bit, but again, not too far. And you don't need your heel to be flat, okay? But again, this one is, you'll be really tempted to lean from the back and just push your hip through, okay? And be sloppy like that. I actually want you to lean forward slightly. You can put your hands on that front knee and then try and squeeze the glutes through. Okay, so squeeze the glute through. And you should feel this here, if you just push forward a little bit more, you should feel a great lengthening higher up in that hip. So let's push for 20, squeeze the glutes, lean forward. You can actually lean forward, you don't need to lean back, okay? It might feel better, it might feel like you're stretching more if you're leaning back, but you're just compensating in your lower back. Okay, other side. So again, try and use your where you've placed yourself as a bit of a marker now. So through. Knee there. So So my heel's just off the floor, hands on the front knee. I can then squeeze my glute and just push forward ever so slightly, locking my spine. I'm not leaning back like here. I'm actually just going to lean forward ever so slightly, keep squeezing the glute. 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. So, there is a few variations on the hip flexor stretch. So you've got the basic one on the floor, you've got the couch stretch with your back foot elevated, and then you've got the front foot elevated version as well. There are loads of extra things you can do with it, but the keys are to keep everything in one straight line. So you squeeze the glutes through, tilt your hips round, and just to make sure you're not cranking on your lower back, stay nice and tight abs, okay, and don't go into this position. You can almost slightly sit forward, okay, so if you're doing a small sit-up. They're the keys really, and then you should feel like your hip flexors are actually being stretched. Right guys, I'll catch you next week. Have a good one.